Hello there, people of the internet. I have a lot of different things in my collection. I know every single piece in my collection because I mess with them so often. Like, this is literally what most of my life revolves around, just because I enjoy doing these things so much. But I have a lot of different things in my collection, and I had somebody tell me that's got to be overwhelming with all the different, firearms that I have in the collection and all of the different kinds of ammunition that these individual firearms take. And I'll be honest, yeah, it is pretty overwhelming. I'm not gonna lie. And it wouldn't be that overwhelming if most of these weren't like old school military surplus guns that I hand load for. And whenever I go out and have my range days, I'll oftentimes bring like, I don't know, a dozen different guns at once with all different kinds of ammunition. Like, I'll burn through those, and I'll try to do that like 2, maybe 3 times a month, give or take. Sometimes it's even more frequent than that. And so whenever you're breaking out all of these different things and burning through all of these different kinds of ammunition, it gets a little bit on the confusing side, trying to figure out how much of what it is that you have. And so every so often what I'll do is I'll go through my stockpiles of ammunition, and I'll figure out how much brass I have, how many projectiles I have to fit what particular cartridge, how much gunpowder I have, how many rounds of ammunition I can actually make, what sort of primers I have, and how much of what is actually loaded. Like, there could be a little bit of confusion and whatnot in terms of what's loaded. Like, I gotta keep things in particularly, what's the word I'm looking for? Segregated between one another, even if they are the same cartridge. Like, if I have just a bunch of 303 British, for example, if I have 303 British loaded with 4064 and then another loaded with some other similar burning powder, and one's full metal jackets, one's soft point, they're both 150 grain, I don't care about that. I mag dump into garbage mostly, unless I'm talking about like particular hunting ammo, which I'll set aside for my own personal use. But I'll go ahead and just mix those together inside of a batch. I mean, as long as I get relatively the same results from the ammunition, then I don't care. But then there's other things, like, for example, this is a really good example. This is a #1 Mark III rifle, chambered in 303 British, and this right here is just fine to run basically anything through. But then I have other guns like a Lee Metford, and I prefer running black powder 303 British through that. And so if I have smokeless powder and black powder 303 British, then, well, I gotta go ahead and make sure that this one goes for these rifles and this one goes for these rifles. And then if I have different bullet weights, like say, I got a #1 Mark III, which is somewhere inside of my pile of stuff here. I got a #1 Mark III that's actually quite good, and it runs 150 grain bullets extraordinarily well. But this one right here is an RTI buy, and it doesn't run lighter weight bullets all that great. It prefers the heavier weight stuff, simply because the heavier bullets, they're going to be longer and they engage rifling better, and I get significantly better accuracy with heavier weight bullets through that thing. Not only that, but they're going slower, so it gives the rifling more time to engage with the bullet. But bottom line, if I'm going to be segregating my heavier bullets from my lighter bullets, from the black powder bullets, from alright, this black powder is rocking 150 grain, this black powder is rocking 220 grain, this, that, and the other thing, and that's all just for one in particular cartridge. That's just for the 303. And then I got, like, different kinds of the same gun. Like, here's a really good example. This is a Mosin Nagant M44, and this is just one variation of the Mosin Nagant rifle. I've got an 1891 or I've got an 1891, and I've got several 9130s, Type 53, several Finnish Mosins, and just so many different variations of the Mosin. So whenever somebody says, hey, XYZ thing about the Mosin Nagant rifle, I'm like, alright, but what Mosin Nagant rifle are you talking about? More often than not, they're talking about the 9130. That's the most popular. And then I got things like this right here. This is a Khyber Pass Lee Enfield, chamber in 303. And it is very clearly handmade. Like, the receiver, the crest, everything doesn't quite line up, doesn't quite match up. The sights themselves, like, if I zero this out for 500 yards, and I push this up like that. That's not a 500 yard zero. The inside of the barrel itself, the rifling in it is so inconsistent. I'm not sure what tool it is that they used for it. And the barrel itself, I'm not sure if this thing's made out of rebar or something, but it just doesn't look right. So there's a lot going on with this gun, and this is just one of those things that makes me decide this is one of those guns I'm never going to shoot. And it's not exactly overwhelming for me to be like, all right, this is one of those that I'm never going to shoot, but I gotta make sure not to get, like, confused. And I don't think that I ever would get confused, because that's one of those that's very, what's the word I'm looking for? Obvious. That's one of those ones that I'm not going to shoot. But there are other examples, like for example, one of these in here is a Carcano. It's an 1891 Carcano, and I've got, I don't know, 20 Carcano rifles in my collection. But that particular one, the headspace is off, and it is not safe to shoot. So I got to make sure I pay attention to that particular one and make sure it never finds its way out to the range to go out and send some lead, because the headspace is like dramatically off, and if that ever were to fire, I feel like it would be a really, really bad time. So just the number of things that you got to pay attention to. Here's another really good example. This is a short-barreled Mauser, and the barrel on it, I think, is 20 inches, if memory serves me correctly. It might be 18 inches. But bottom line, it's a short barrel, but this is one that came from Ethiopia, and the barrel is completely handmade, and it is chambered in 8mm Mauser, but the bore of the barrel is not an 8mm bore. As a matter of fact, I think it's a 30 caliber bore. I haven't actually slugged the barrel to find out. But I think it's 8mm Mauser with a 30 caliber bore, so it's going to be like a Wildcat cartridge. I got to actually figure out the bullet diameter and whatnot. There's no rifling or anything inside of this barrel, so I have no hopes of it actually hitting its target properly. But if I were to just shove 8mm Mauser in that thing, pull the trigger, it goes bang, I might get grenaded. So yes, the number of things that I gotta pay attention to whenever it comes to these guns is absolutely overwhelming. The amount of things I gotta pay attention to whenever it comes to the ammunition is absolutely overwhelming. I take, I don't know, I take, say, let's say I got 3 range trips in a month, which is not a lot. More often than not, I'll do like maybe 4 or even 5. I try to go at least once a week. But let's say I take a dozen guns out for 1 range trip, and then I pick another dozen, and then another dozen, which is pretty common and typical for me. And I'll go out and I'll just send a bunch of lead down range. And keeping track of how much of what is fired is not the easiest. So after, say, 3 months or so, I'll go through my amounts of stuff that I have, like my amounts of ammunition that I have, and I'll take note on how much of what I still have, and that will tell me what I have to reload for, so I get back up to my numbers for the things that I'm running out. Here's another really good example of paying close attention to what you stick inside of it. This is a Hakim rifle, 8mm Mauser, semi-auto, great little guns. But I have a whole bunch of... Do I have any actually here with me right now? I do not. I have a whole bunch of Turkish 8mm Mauser ammunition, and that stuff is extraordinarily spicy, and it's inconsistently spicy. I have seen those things... They normally are supposed to run about like a 155 grain bullet, moving at about 3,000 feet per second, which is about normal for 8mm Mauser. But I've seen those things chronograph out to like 3,200 feet per second. And running those through a gas-operated 8mm Mauser rifle, it's just not good for it. It's going to end up blowing up your gas system and quite possibly injuring the shooter. So that is another example of one thing you got to pay attention to. Otherwise, you might find yourself with some problems. That is one of the downsides about having a big old collection like what I have. Like, for example, if I had just, say, guns chambered in 30-06, then, dude, life would be so much easier. I could have, like, a 30-06 Mauser. I have the M1 Grand. I would probably have like a modern sporterized 30-06 or some sort of like modern hunting rifle. I think in 1903, 1917, and that should be able to cover me with pretty much everything. And I could just run into balling everything, or just update the gas system for the M1 Grand. And there's a lot of different kinds of 30-06 out there, but I would just have to worry about 30-06. With everything I got here, just looking at my pile of stuff that I got here, I got 8x50 Steyr, I got 8x50 Lebel, 303 British, I got 30-06 right there, that's 6.5 Carcano, 7.62x39, 45 ACP. I got several 223s, I got several round balls, I got a bunch of 8mm Mausers, 7.62x54R, I got one right there and one right there, that's 7.7 Jap. 7.65 Argentine, a bunch more 8mm. That's a Steyr rifle. I got some 7.5 French. Bottom line, there's a bunch of stuff that I got to worry about, and you got to pay attention to the nuances for each little individual rifle. And that's just making them go bang and go bang safely. That's not talking about things like load development or figuring out what each individual in particular likes, and something like that is overwhelming to the point to where I simply don't do it. Like, for example, this Steyr 8890, I have 3 of these, and I think this is the one that likes lightweight bullets. I can't quite remember. I got it written down somewhere. I got a gun journal where I just write down all sorts of stuff for all of these different firearms. But I think that's the one that likes the lightweight bullets, and I think the one that I have that has the stock broken, that has the battlefield repair on it, I think that's the one that likes the 198 grain heavy bullets. And I know for a fact this #1 Mark III likes the heavy bullets, and my other one likes the lighter bullets. And that Steyr M95, I don't think that likes any bullets. I gotta counterboard that one. This M1 Grand definitely likes the 150 grain bullets, but whenever I run 174 grain bullets through my other M1 Grand, it just absolutely smokes the everything else that I own in terms of accuracy. Like, normally the M1 Grand is like a 4 MOA rifle. I consistently get 1 MOA groups with 174 grain through that other M1 Grand. With an updated gas system, I'm sure somebody's going to yell at me down below, but the gas system is updated, so I can run whatever the hell I want through it. Oh look, my 3030, yet another thing to add onto my complex pile of all sorts of different things that I got to pay attention to in order to make these run. I got no idea what a good portion of these firearms like. Like this Hakim, I don't know it well enough to know what bullet what bullet types it enjoys, or that Mosin right there, I got no idea what bullet weights it prefers. This one right here prefers the 174s. That's my primary Mosin that I go to. I don't think I've ever even fired that Moss 4956. Typically, if I'm firing 7.5 French, I'm using my Moss 36. No idea what my modern Savage Axis 223 prefers. It's a 1-in-9 twist, so I'm betting it would probably run 55 and 62 grain bullets pretty gosh darn well, but I have not actually tested that, so it's one of those things I gotta get out there and test. There's just so much. There's so much, dude. That SKS in 7.62x39, I got no idea. Your guess is as good as mine as to what it prefers. Normally Barnell does pretty gosh darn good, but I know my AK actually prefers the what are they called? The bimetal jackets of Wolf and Tula, which is like a steel jacket. It's a harder jacket. I guess the rifling is designed for those kinds of jackets because it runs those really well. And the soft alloy or copper jackets of other kinds of projectiles, it doesn't run those very well. Lots of different things to pay attention to, and yeah, there's quite the number of stuff to look at. I wanted to go ahead and make this video because it's a topic that not a lot of people talk about, but basically everybody who has a collection like I have feels. It gets to a point to where you have so many different things that you have a few things that are your primary. Like I got my primary 9130. I got my primary 8mm Mauser. It's my Yugoslavian 2447. And my primary M1 Grand and primary AR. And then my primary AK. And then all of the other things, I just don't have enough trigger time on to be able to really tell what they all do and do not prefer. And that's just a result of what it is that I do. not necessarily a bad thing. It's just one of those things where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna grab that 8mm Mauser right there, or this one right here. This is my Car 98. That's a World War II Car 98 right there. If I'm like, hey, I'm gonna grab this right here and just grab whatever surplus ammo I have laying around, maybe that surplus ammo will be really good in that, or maybe it will be absolutely awful. As a matter of fact, I think I ran some Yugoslavian surplus through that and I was getting keyholes, but then I ran Turkish surplus through that and it was running just fine. So, little things to look for. Anyway, I think I've said my ramblings on for this video. Thanks for watching, folks. I appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share. Description below is a link to all sorts of stuff. Go check it out. You guys go off. Have yourself a fantastic day. I'll see you on the next episode.
Been a little while since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. Poor man's Garrett. It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.